you at the end of what was just another incredible All-Ireland hurling final. Gerlach, I had this notion. I was walking past a bookie's office the other day, and I was going to put a couple of bob on it, and I said, no, it couldn't be a draw.
For 3 in a row.
You were a very cautious guy, very cautious.
For 3 years in a row, and it was 50 years before that, before there was a draw.
I know, that's the first draw, of course, between Tip and Kilkenny in the All-Ireland final as well.
Of course it is, yeah, but I suppose, you know, it's the old saying that if ever a game deserved to in a draw, this was it, because it was breathtaking. Absolutely exhilarating, heroic performances on both sides, mistakes by referees, by players, brilliant scores. 54 scores and only 9 wides in the whole game. That'll tell you the quality you had today. Yeah. You had an All-Ireland that brought the game to a new level altogether. 2 terrific teams played in the very, very best of sporting manner that you could ask for. It is everything that we love in the game of hurling was out there today. And it's only right that both sets of players, both sets of supporters, managers, everything, and all of us would get a second chance to see who would win it.
And on a day like this, I suppose it was absolutely fitting that the game ended on a piece of drama as well. The free for Bubbles Dwyer, Hawkeye has to decide in the end.
We thought Hawkeye was going to decide this All-Ireland final, right, you know, and look,
big call.
This Brian Hogan, nothing on his mind, straight up the centre again. That, to me, was a huge, huge call. I mean, if he's giving for charging against Brian Hogan,
most referees, Tomas, to give it the other way.
They would give it the other way, to be fair, right? But look, at the end of the day, I think justice was done, that it ended up in a draw, Michael. This is a huge opportunity for John O'Dwyer. The crowd went bananas behind the goal. The crowd on each side went lunatic. You can see the Tipperary supporters. They thought it was over. The Tipperary boys thought it was over again. But the referee, he calls for Hawkeye. And
well, it's great that we have Hawkeye.
It is fantastic that we have Hawkeye, you know. And
talk about nothing between the teams, only Hawkeye.
Only Hawkeye. The umpire is justified. He did get the call right. He went wide. So it was just an incredible occasion, incredible match, and an incredible finish.
Yeah.
But Michael, the big thing about the game was the catching, the blocking, the hooking, the stopping, the scores, Richie Hogan's points, Bubbles Dwyer's points. These are unbelievable stuff in the heat of 80,000, pressure on, and like...
Cyril, the big thing about the game was everything from the time the ball was thrown in.
It was just electric. And they were saying during the week there was a couple of thousand tickets handed back before this game. I'll guarantee you before the next one there'll be no ticket handed back, because it was a privilege for us to be sitting here, and the boys kept saying it. This should end in a draw, to be fair to. I know no one wants to draw when your Tip don't want it or Kilkenny don't want it. It could have gone either way. Big call in the end. But, you know, like...
The replay might be down in Limerick.
Don't mention that.
Maybe you should go to... Hold on a second. Maybe you should go to the home of Hurling. Maybe you should go to Thurles. Mind about Limerick or...
The replay was here last year at 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, and was one of the most memorable occasions that you ever had. Yeah. We had the lights at the end of it, and it was a fantastic occasion, and the next day is going to be exactly the same.
But isn't it amazing, though, the level that hurling is got? You know, the quality of the hurling today. You know, the quality of the defending was so good. Yes, one team got 128 and the other scored 322. Like, you know, the creative running of both sides, the creation of space, not alone by Tip, but by Kilkenny as well. You know, then Tip being out of it after Kilkenny getting those sucker goals. The heroic performance of that Tipperary defence and all the Tipperary players. You know, and players, there were questions about them before, really stepped up to the mark today.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, Barrett.
I think one decision.
Right, lads?
Yeah, one was putting Richie Hogan at centre forward. That was a master stroke in that second half period when he was under, and Finley to midfield. He finished up with 6 points.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, lads, a few fellas around here need to check their pulse at the end of that. We are going to have more reaction and analysis after this break.
Breath back yet, it was pretty heart-stopping.
Yeah, it was a serious game, obviously, Claire, you know, impossible to know what was going to happen out there, really, you know, and they pulled away a bit the first half. We came back great. We got a great start to the second half and played some really good hurling. They came back and then they had the last puck of the ball to win the game, obviously, and that went to Hawkeye, so that's the way it went.
The third year in a row it's a draw. I mean, proof as if we needed it that there's so little between these two teams.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's obvious to anybody who's been following the game, really, you know, it's the way it has been. It's more than likely the way it's going to be the next day too, so I think it's 3 weeks' time or whatever, so it'll be amazing to think that it's 3 years in a row there and finals a draw, but that's the way it has.
Some incredible battles all over the field. In the first half you found yourself 6 points down, but you dug in and you fought back.
Yeah, we did, yeah, and I mean, obviously, I'm always saying 6 points is not a big lead in hurling, really, you know, and you've got to try and grab the initiative back, and, you know, the lads came back into it very, very well, and Plus the way the game went, we took control, they took control, and it went, and scores were coming thick and fast, really, you know. But I'm sure for those people who were able to sit back and relax and watch it, it was an excellent game.
It certainly was. 2 goals for you in the second half. You disappointed maybe that you didn't push on from there when you were a couple in front?
Obviously, it's what you like to do, but I mean, the same thing was in reverse in the first half. You know, like I said, it's not a huge lead. It changes on bits and pieces of things that can happen, you know, and that's the reality of it. And you know, it's just hurling is like that. You know, it's so fast, it's so furious. A goal you can get a bit of a lead, and suddenly a goal whips it all back. So we'll have to go do it all again anyway, that's for sure.
And you faced 2 penalties and saved them. You must have thought at that point it would be your day.
Well, no, you never think it's your day, you know. Like, you know, you keep going until the final whistle, and you don't even think about the score, you don't think about the time, you just want to know the next ball, what's happening to it and all the rest of it. And that changed and went from here to there all over the time. But there were some outstanding performances, outstanding battles, and it was just a great game, I suppose.
Your thoughts on that final free, and as John O'Dwyer stepped up to take it, what were you thinking?
I didn't realise the last puck of the game, to be honest, you know. He's a very good free taker, so I probably thought he'd probably score it, to be honest, you know, and he almost did.
You almost did. We've got to do it all again. You've been here before 2 years ago, so you know what it takes to go back now and calm things down and get ready again.
Yeah, but you look at it, I mean, it's like, I suppose, leaving after an All-Ireland semi-final, you're going away for 3 weeks to prepare for the All-Ireland final, and that's where we're at now. So it's going to be back to the, obviously, recover for the week and all the rest of it. That's a huge game. Physically, it took a lot out of the players, and we just have to recover. There won't be an awful lot of training done in the meantime, but we still have to get set for it, and it will arrive.
Well, thanks, Brian. We look forward to you doing it all over again.
And Claire, thank you.
I get the impression Brian is still trying to make sense of all that in his own head at the moment, and why wouldn't he? One thing about that Gerlach Nan is, in the Leinster Championship against Galway, they let Galway back into the end of that game, ended up in a draw. They let Tip back into this game today. Is that a worry for Brian Cody? Because in the past, Kilkenny would have just closed out games like this.
They would, you know, because they had come from behind. They got the goal just after half-time. And then just on 60 minutes, 10 minutes to go, they were 4 points ahead. Richie Power gets the ball in the 21. He over-elaborates a small bit, trying to go for the goal rather than the point. To be 5 points in it, the ball is cleared, down to Canlan, ball over the bar. Next ball out, Canlan, another point. Next, the ball now, instead of pulling away, the game is really in the melting pot now. But you would have to say a lot of that is due to the defending and the overall quality of Tipperary's display, the spirited display by Tipperary. They just refused to die today, even when the game seemed gone from them. Now, you know, Kilkenny still scored 322, which is a massive score, like, in an All-Ireland final. But at the same time, the menace inside wasn't as great as we thought it would be. I know they scored 3 goals and a few other chances of goals, but the menace from the Tipperary forwards, 128 and a lot of misses as well, it was far greater today than Kilkenny's, and that's the thing I think that'll worry him most.
And yes, Tomás Mulcahy, I think Tip fans would have felt the menace was there right at the start of the second half, because Kilkenny came out and they did one thing that Kilkenny do down through the years. They hit them with a right punch.
They hit him, right? And look, this is what we see about Kilkenny all the time. Owen Larkin gets the block in, the ball breaks out to Walter Walsh, it's back to Killian Buckley, and it's a high ball into the square again. And watch the break. Now, you could argue the point here, right? You look at TJ Reid, which you could argue the point Richie Power here. Has he fouled the Tipperary back, right? It breaks to Michael Finlay and into TJ Reid. There was no goal on here, but he turns. What he's done so well, a bullet of a shot into the back of the net. And that gave Kilkenny some tonic at the start of the second half. They were 2 points down. They went a point ahead. But I think, like Jura's right, these boys never panicked, that Tipperary team. They never panicked, even when they were 4 points down. They kept chipping away at the points. They had goal-scoring opportunities, but they kept chipping away at the points. And I think today Tipperary really stood up and were counted. I mean, people had questioned about them when the game had gone against them, when they had went 4 and 5 points down. Would they fold or would they come up? Today they grew as men, and they were a very, very united bunch in the last closing minutes. It was a fantastic performance by both sides.
No doubt about that, because they got hit with another goal, of course, Ger, after that.
Today, you know, they fought back to being level again after that, and then Richie Power, you know, this was in the 47th minute, you know, and the game so ferocious now. Big move here, Mick Finlay going to midfield in the second half, as Tomás already said. That was a huge move. Now look at the skill of Power. And look at his calmness when he gets the ball, even though he gets a small bit away from him. The composure, you know, he has done it so often here. You know, Finlay going to the... He was no better centre forward, and Richie Hogan was centre forward, of course, yeah. Now, look at the arc he takes. You know, look at the run he takes to put off his man. He goes around in an arc, not straight through. He's around in an arc, gets the ball, and then when Richie gets into that position, you can be telling your man to put up the green flag. And that's what he did. Yeah. But
Tip missed a penalty opportunity in the first half. They get another one in the second half. They change the taker, but it's the same outcome.
Yeah, well, to get 2 penalties and 2 saves. Now here, Larry Corbett was elected.
This was a good save.
And unlucky not to be scoring goals here.
Again, we asked the question: was it a penalty?
Well,
inside or outside?
It was tackle. I'd say Jackie Turr kind of came. Watch Jackie Turr coming across here now. Look at.
Yeah,
that's.
What was free scoring? The intensity of the game, I thought, was superb all through. To me, it was up on a par with anything we've seen from what these two teams have produced over the last number of years. I thought it was excellent from start to finish. You know, it looked at the start that Tip were going to kick on. They got that 5-point cushion after 25 minutes, had the penalty to try and maybe push the gap on to 8, and they might have shoved on from that. Kilkenny come just roaring back into the game, goal after half-time. You know, there's still that few points up with 10 minutes to go. But full credit to Tipperary and Eamon O'Shea's charges. They seen it out. They never stopped trying, kept picking off the points. And actually, with the time just up, they were the team, I felt, with all the momentum. Yeah. They probably would have loved to have had another 2 or 3 minutes, because I felt actually they had the momentum to get over the line at that stage.
John Logan, your memory of finals, was it the best final you've seen?
Yeah, I haven't seen any better days. I think, you know, intensity, skill, commitment and the dedication of the players to every single tackle, you know, stretching every bit of themselves and probably straining every part of their body and their heart to try and win as much as possible for if you like, the glory of the game and the glory of the jersey and the people that they represent. I think it was fantastic. I think as a GA person, as a hurling person, you couldn't feel, but, you know, it was a thing of beauty today. Yeah.
Eddie, as a Kilkenny man, obviously that last minute free, you had your own views on it, but it would have been one of those games that would be terrible to see a team lose after a game like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have been very disappointing, and you know, OK, we'd love to have seen someone win such an epic battle, but myself and Liam had our own little battle side by side. We were nudging and digging and
dirty pulling and everything on there.
I'm glad there wasn't a camera on it. There was a bit of hip to hip stuff, but yeah, it was for any player. Look, they emptied the tank there today. They gave us an absolutely battle. I think full, you know, hats off to both sets of players. It was absolutely brilliant stuff. And what I really liked about it was there was a few times there was frees that were given. The players weren't really looking for the frees. They bounced up, they passed it off, they were looking to get it. And that was a great thing about it. I think, you know, there was so much ifs and buts beforehand. You know, there was speculation about all sorts of stuff, and it was just, they treated us to an absolutely epic game that ebbed and flowed. Both sides got in front, came back and had their areas of dominance. And I think, as Liam said there, I felt with the last 2 or 3 minutes we were on the ropes big time, and you know, just thankfully we survived, having, you know, looked like maybe being in control with 10 minutes out.
Because people had questioned beforehand, has this great Kilkenny team, you know, the end has to come sometime for those who've been there a long time, Liam. But was that just momentum for Tip, or do you think Kilkenny were tiring in those closing stages?
I think they were tiring. Definitely think they were tiring. I thought a few times, you know, their concentration levels definitely dropped, and that comes with tiredness in my view, you know. Like, generally when Kilkenny get 4 points up with 10 minutes to go on the clock, it's very, very rarely you see them being hauled back, you know, and Tipperary done that today. And it wasn't the goal, you know, you nearly feel with that 10 minutes to go, Tipperary are going to need to raise the green flag. And by God, did they go close to raising green flags at various stages throughout that second half. But not having got the goal, you know, their composure on the ball. And I suppose Eamon O'Shea, you know, I know he puts a huge amount, I've seen it up close myself in terms of the work he puts into forwards, in terms of how they release and play in front on the biggest stage of all. And I mean, he'll be extremely proud in terms of how his forward line carried themselves, you know, as will both teams, you know. But specifically, I think that final 5 minutes when you know, it was backs to the wall stuff, and they came up with 3, you know, fantastic scores.
And we will be discussing man of the match later, and there were so many candidates, obviously, so many great performances. But when you mentioned the Tip forwards, Liam, don't look, Larry Corbett, he seemed to revel in the game today. He was buzzing.
Yeah, he was buzzing, Des, and it was great to see him, if you like. He seemed so relaxed out there, and he seemed, you know, maybe it's the Eamon O'Shea influence, and, you know, he seemed just happy where he was, and he was able to express himself, and he chipped in with a couple of scores, but some of his distribution was top class, and some of his hand passes were class, and, you know, again, I think that all hurling people will be delighted to see Lar being able to do that on the big day.
It probably helped too that he wasn't the main focus of the Tipperary attack like he was previously. You know, he was the form forward for Tip around 10, 11. He was scoring heavily, and you know, we'd have said, look, if we can hold Lar, and that did happen in 2011. Whereas today, it was Seamus Callan, it was Bubbles, it was Bonner, were the spine of their attack really. And I think that it frees up a fella to maybe go along and perform.
But I think also on that, Des, I mean, you know, it shows the mental strength of the guy. You know, I mean, you know, a lot of people would have said he didn't really fire in the semi-final. He was carrying a knock. He couldn't play with his club, Thurles Sarsfields, the week after. So, like, his preparation was far from ideal coming into this game. And he goes out today and he's 14 plays. And every one of those plays had a massive impact. He very nearly got one of the goals of the season, if that, you know, that close to putting that ball on the top of the net. And that's the margins, you know, between victory and, as I said, they'll be very happy that they're not in the losing side tonight. But, I mean, it just goes to show you the mental strength of Lara Corbett. I mean, he's around a long, long time now. And to go and bring that performance, which is well in excess of what he's done all season, I think speaks volumes about the chap.
Yeah, and he's been maligned in certain places, be it outside the county and even
inside the county.
Inside the county is what I was going to say. And, you know, I think not alone Lar, like we've referred to it a couple of times here, mental strength, last couple of minutes, Kilkenny up by a couple of points. There were question marks about maybe the mentality of the entire Tipperary team, and could they do it when it was in the melting pot? I definitely think they answered those questions today.
Go on, Eddie. I was going to ask you about the matchups and the tactical battle, because the mental strength of the players is one thing, but the management had to be there was so much movement going on trying to counteract what had been done.
Yeah,
it's fascinating.
And for us, for everyone looking in, that was a big talking point. You know, what will they do? Who will mark who? What way will it be? You know, and even at the throw-in here, we've seen TJ Reid just stayed out there, left James Barry on the edge of the square, which was, you know, an intent maybe. Are they going to go a two-man full forward line? But you know, we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit here, and we're fast forwarding to the second half, and Pádraig Maher was roaring into that match at centre back. They shifted him into centre back on Michael Fennelly, and he came out with a couple of great balls. You know, was setting up the Tip when Tip were after conceding the early goal to Richie Power, and he really drove on and set up a few of the Tipperary attacks. So what did Brian Cody and his management team do? They hammered the hammer, you know, as Tomas said last week. Richie Hogan went in on him, and Richie Hogan grew into that match in a big, big way, picked off 4 or 5 points. You know, this is an absolutely brilliant one. Small man, and up he went, eye on the ball all the way. And that is a superb point, absolutely superb. And he's been doing that all year long. And that is the versatility of Richie Hogan. He can play anywhere. He has ran the show for Kilkenny from midfield this year. And, you know, if we go to the first half even, the 6 forwards from Kilkenny in their starting positions all started in completely different positions. Up the other ends, you had Lar, like Liam done in 2009, put him at 11 on Brian Hogan. Bubbles went in 13, Bonner went out 12, and Noel McGrath went across to the 15 side. So there was changes everywhere, and you know, Kilkenny even had to adjust to that. Joey Holden found himself cornerback, went back out on the wing. So that was intriguing in itself. You know, and Tip then by the end of the first half, I think ended up man for man, because TJ was number 10 and James Barry was with him. So all in all, it was a great sideline battle, and the composure, the way them changes in the second half worked for both sets of management. You know, Pádraig flying in centre back, then Richie, and then Mickey Cahill was the last one. We didn't get to see. Mickey Cahill ended up going in centre back on Richie Hogan.
Yeah, but I was going to ask you that, Liam. When Richie was in that scoring vein of, you know, he got 5 points in the second half, should Tip have made a change on him earlier?
Well, I suppose Eddie picked out some snippets before that where Pádraig Maher was just immense. You know, like it's very hard. Like we've seen it, the amount of the individual battles that goes on. I mean, you're going to come under pressure for a period in a match. When you're on a player of the calibre of Richie Hogan, he's going to have his moments. And I think, you know, Eamon was trying to wait. You know, some of them, you know, he had very little chance of dealing with them. You know, but I thought the work rate all through of both sets of players was unbelievable. I mean, it finished at 31 points all today. You know, when we look at the hooks, blocks, and tackles count, Kilkenny got in 32 and Tipperary got in 30. I mean, that's a phenomenal turnaround, you know, in terms of honesty of effort from both sets. And I mean, you just didn't get a chance to compose yourself. And you know, here's Gearóid Ryan. You think he's got his job done, and like Owen Larkin, who was a rash for a lot of the time for Tipperary today. You know, he just got himself about it. Everywhere they were going in, just putting bodies on the line. And several passages of play where, you know, you just couldn't pick off the handy score today. I mean, such a contrast to last year's All Ireland, where it was very, very free flowing, and some you know, simple enough scores got. And again, even when you think Tipperary in control, they're looking to work the ball out and recycle. Noel McGrath gets up, but you just don't get a second. In comes Owen Larkin straight away. He's very, very good at it. Goes in behind him. Joey Holden makes the run up. And again, even though Richie Power
He doesn't get long in it. Michael Fennelly, and look at the effort that Kilkenny had to put in to that passage of play to get the ball over the bar. Like it was just phenomenal. And I suppose this really epitomised it again. You know, Jackie Tyrrell. How often have you seen him just turn onto his left hand side and bang the ball over? Noel McGrath has read it, and again here Kilkenny get a second chance at it. And here he is, the man himself, Bonner Maher. You know, he throws himself around so often in those situations. And again, he goes in, wins the dirty ball, and you know, he looks as if he's bottled up pops Bubbles. And again, Paddy Stapleton is, I think personally, tried him centre forward there a few years ago. They're probably happy in Tipperary that they did now, because he picked off a lovely pint off his left hand side in a great score. But like, that's really what engrossed me today all through, was just the honesty of effort.
That's brilliant, because there's a very thin line between applying pressure and giving away the foul, and players are very conscious of that now, and you could see that today. They were trying to tackle and put pressure on lads without giving away the simple free.
But isn't it extraordinary, Eddie, despite that intensity, and you had to work so hard, as Liam showed there, to get your space, there were still 54 scores in the match.
Yeah, quite phenomenal. I'd say that must have set some kind of a record today. It was absolutely unbelievable to see so many scores from play. I think, was it Tippett only 2 or 3 from frees? Four from frees, and then Kilkenny at the other end, TJ Reid a couple from frees as well. Absolutely phenomenal. And it's what you want to see, and to a certain extent, I suppose we'll have to give Barry a bit of credit too. He did contribute to that, to be fair to him. He let it flow on occasions. A few, I think, in the first half probably would have reddened a few of the Kilkenny crowd. But look, to be fair to him, you know, he played his role today as well in letting it be free flowing, and that we had that spectacle.
We'll look at that later on. Now, Barry did give 2 penalties, and the penalties were a big talking point, maybe the rule, etc. We'll talk about it in a moment. But first of all, Donald, let's establish, were they penalties?
Yeah, well, Des, we took a look at it, and it was obviously there were big factors in the game. Bonner Maher, like he was doing all day, trying to bring the ball down and take on the Kilkenny defence. The reality is here, right? He was fouled, but it was outside the zone. Funnily enough, Barry went in and he did the right thing. He stayed calm, went in and asked his umpires as to what happened. And as you can see, clearly it was outside the line. You'd be, if you were Barry Kelly there, you'd be looking for a better dig out from your umpires. I think there was a couple of incidents today, especially with the Hawkeye and a couple of the wides and stuff like that. That
was
you'd
his
expect.
Sideline blocked there, Donald?
Yeah, it probably was, and he's a long ways away, and the game is moving so fast. At that point, I would have went for a point. At that stage, Tipperary were 5 points up, and that would have made them 6. And it's harder to score a penalty, you know, as we've seen a couple of times. Again, looking at this here, it was outside the zone when Lara was fouled. Interestingly enough, it was JJ got the yellow card. But again, a couple of things on this penalty. I never like seeing a penalty taker striking the ball to the strong side of a keeper. And when I was looking at this today, and anybody gets a chance to look back, and I'm sure the coach and staff for Tip look at it, they had very few players ready to pounce on the break. It was amazing. They were like, if you saw all the Kilkenny fellas that were lined up, there wasn't a chance that they were going to get a rebound the way they'd set up for it.
All right. Well, Liam, the penalty rule is a big talking point, and Donald, you were involved, and we spoke at length last year. Anthony Nash, in particular, it became known the rule was changed. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It came to, I suppose, it came to a head in the championship game between Cork and Waterford this year, and the powers that be decided that they needed to do something, and this rule was brought in that you can't go beyond the 21 when you're striking the ball.
Yeah. And one very interesting thing for our viewers is that, Liam, you might show us, in the league final between Kilkenny and Tip, Kilkenny got 2 penalties under the old rule because it was in the league, and they scored both of them. Liam, you might illustrate there the difference now and how
well, I mean, it's exactly that, you know. I mean, you see the way the rules change. I mean, TJ Reid is striking the ball on the 14, and, you know, he cracks the ball into the back of the net. But in both instances, you know, the advantage in this instance in the league final is with the attacker. You know, they're brought down, and this is the one in the second half, you know. And I suppose these are the margins, you know. And again, he rasps the ball into the back of the net. Brendan Maher nearly lost his head with the ball at the speed it was travelling. So, you know, going back in it, you know, those 2 goals, that match finished in a draw. Yeah. If the rule was as it is now, you know, you probably would have had Tipperary been league league champions. And likewise today, you know, we've shifted the advantage now clearly into the hands of the defender. That's the bottom line.
That's the key thing, Des. It's the advantage should be with the attacking team if you're fouled. And anybody who's stood in goals or taken penalties, as we all have around here, it's a huge difference if the ball has been struck from outside the 21.
And that's the thing, I suppose, the point we're making, this was trashed out earlier on in the year. Is a penalty in its present position where you can strike it inside the 20, you know, you have the 20-metre line, is it fitting enough punishment? Is it increasing is it rewarding the attacker?
Yeah.
And you'd say in this instance, if you're a defender, take him down and we'll take a chance.
What would I mean, Liam, you're on a committee, and I suppose you have to deal as a committee. Eddie, what would you do now with the rule?
I think you'd have to definitely have a look at the goalkeeper versus the penalty striker. If it's going to be outside the 20-metre line, you have to have it struck before you get there. Then I certainly think you have to balance it up and give the advantage there. As we said, and we're repeating ourselves now, the defenders, you have a chance there. You'd be telling your boys, rip them down, in for the goal, and let them take their chances. Whereas now, if you were to bring in that system where it's one-on-one with the goalkeeper, then it's probably a better chance of converting it.
Yeah, and like, I'm not saying the rules are the same, but like, you go back to football, which is, you know, our other game, and like generally when you get a penalty in football, it's the advantage to the forward.
But they moved it even
in closer. Yeah, but I mean, it's an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 scenario in football. You know, we hurling has now shifted where.
What is it out of 10? If I was to ask you, is it 3 out of 10?
I think when this was brought in last year, like you're saying, I was involved, and I'd support what Eddie has said. I think that it would balance things up if you had one player, the goalkeeper, on the line facing the attacker. I think what we said at the time was, and I would have been very strong on it and not talking out of shop, if you like, that you were bound, the amount of goals that were going to be scored was bound to decrease. I think what happened this year, Patrick Hurling was probably one of the first strikers post the rule being changed. He scored, and that kind of camouflaged the problem that existed. But I think it was made very clear again today, there is a problem and it needs to be dealt with.
By Liam. And you created it.
And his co-host.
All right. Well, look, that's the penalty rule. The decision-making that players have to do in the intense environment that Liam referred to.
And this comes from, it comes from training ground, you know, putting players in decision-making scenarios under pressure. I felt at this stage of the match, this was to put, as Liam said, maybe 8 points up. I felt Seamus Callan should have put that over the bar. 6 points up. Kilkenny were under big pressure at the time. This is in the second half, right? There's 61 minutes on the clock. There's an easy point for Richie Power, and he tries a very ambitious pass. You know, you'd be saying 5 points up. This ball went all the way up the field, and Seamus Callan got a point. So that's a 2-point swing. Liam, we mentioned this already. Jackie Tyrrell has an option inside him. Killian Buckley, which he offers himself as an option the whole time, gets blocked down. You'd be saying this is with 63 minutes left, or 63 minutes gone. Work it out, I'd be saying there. A bit of composure. Kilkenny get a second bite at the cherry. This is 3 points up to come out, clear their lines. I think maybe, carry the ball or find one of your loose men. And in fairness to Tip, as Liam said earlier on, the great work rate, when the match is in the melting pot, and obviously both sets of players are after being through the ringer as regards physical exertion, so that slows down the real calculated mindset and thinking cool. Conor Fogarty again wins this ball, and I'd be saying carry that out, draw the free and slow it down. Instead, and to be fair to Conor Fogarty, he covered a hell of a lot of ground today, so the energy mightn't have been in the legs, and that's after pegging them back with 4 minutes to go instead of being 3 points up. And this is in the first half, just to illustrate as well. Garrod Ryan had a chance, or just after half time had a chance. He had Shane McGrath across the field all on his own. Instead, he tries one over the shoulder, and this ends up in the back of the net for TJ Reid. So, what the point I've been making there is that there was a couple of decisions that obviously changed the ebb and flow of the match. Seamus Callan and then Richie Powers. I mean, Richie Power had a chance to probably really put a big nail in Tip's coffin today after having a fine match, and it just left the door open. We were talking about earlier on that they were just after shoving the Tipperary head under the water, and they let him back up for air. There was a chance there maybe to nail it home. But look, it's very hard to be critical of players in that scenario because, as I said, the physical exertion was unreal there today. So, but it's just something that I'd say in the end of that match, Kilkenny may well have steered themselves out of trouble, but that's in no small part down to the pressure that Tip applied.
Yeah. Liam, there was reference from Eddie earlier, but a couple of marginal calls, particularly in the first 20 minutes, that irritated the Kilkenny fans. As a tip man, have a look at them for us.
Yeah, I think obviously Barry was probably getting the wrath of the Kilkenny, I suppose, supporters in some stages. I mean, there was a few tackles that definitely were probably, it was marginal to know. Like this one, I don't think there's any question. Paddy puts his arm in around Owen Larkin. To me, it should have been a free in. And I suppose it's a double blow for Kilkenny in this instance where the ball is worked up and Noel McGrath strikes a great point. And you could hear the crowd and the boos were coming in because they really felt that was a ball that should have been over the bar the other side. You can see there he comes across and catches him in full flight. And, I think this one was definitely free. So this was the very next play after the ball going over the bar. In fairness to Owen Larkin, he puts his hand up, catches a wonderful ball, comes through, and you can see Kieran Bergen there coming in, just catching him on the shoulder, pulling back his arm, and Barry awards him the free. This is another talking point for me, obviously, and we were just talking about, you can see there the kick goes out, Paddy Stapleton loses his footing, ball breaks inside, and I mean, we cannot. What a finish from TJ Reid! Absolutely takes the net out of it with a fantastic finish. But again, in another day, it could have been a free out. And I suppose the last one of all, to me, it was steel on steel in some ways. Patrick Maher coming down and going shoulder to shoulder with Brian Hogan. Maybe obviously, it's a hard one. The two of them are coming. It's in full flight. I would have maybe let the arms up and let it play away, but it ended up, this could have been a massive talking point, Des, for everyone that was at the match. I mean, you see the tip crowd behind the goals. I mean, imagine if the ball was had to be awarded a point. Yeah. Last puck of the game, and Hawkeye decides who wins the All-Ireland final 2014. Yeah. So
I'm just going to come in with two little points there, and I'm not endorsing, probably, it does take off the jersey, but Paddy Stapleton, there was a face mask pull, there was two, that was a big hit, possibly a yellow. So, you'd be saying them decisions didn't go their way. And the other one was put a little spanner in the works. Barry Kelly has refereed 6 of Kilkenny's last few championship matches, and they haven't managed to get over the line in 4 of them. Now, I wouldn't be, driving that home. But I'm not. I'm just saying it's something that people are offering up, and I don't think it'd be fair to say that that's the reason why. But it's just something that Kilkenny people are quite aggrieved over. Yeah.
Don't know. You be coming back from the match, you thought he let the game flow, Barry Kelly?
I thought he contributed towards the game being such a good, free-flowing game. I think early days, he did make mistakes. We highlighted the mistakes that he made there.
Sure, everyone made mistakes.
Exactly,
today,
but I think he set down the parameters for the game very early days and showed a lot of courage. And I actually think Barry Kelly did well today. If there was any one of the officials that I'd be on the case of tonight, it's the umpires. I think that they left him down a couple of times. And even that time with the Hawkeye, I think the one umpire was involved in the 3 different situations.
All right, then. One of the big... There's so many points in the game where it swung back and pendulum swung, but Richie Hogan, as the lads have referred to, his switch in the second half.
Yeah, Richie Hogan. Look, both of the lads are after speaking about it. But here in around the 45th minute, I was looking at it this evening, he made the change where he went in on Pádraig Maher. And I think Kilkenny were trying to play that role where the centre forward would play off Pádraig Maher, but this guy played it down to a T. Watch him here. He's almost playing in the other half. And the problem that gives for Pádraig Maher is he wants to defend his full back line. You can see him putting his hand up there. He knows what Richie is at, and he knows that the danger of leaving bodies inside like this. In an ideal world, I'm not saying he would have got to it or anything like that, but Pádraig Maher would like to be in there protecting his men. And time again, here's another example of it. You can see again, watch where Richie played. And during a 15-minute, look how far he's coming for the ball. Again, Pádraig looking around. He's trying to go in there, protect that centre-back position, if you like. And watch the way he follows up. And this is the difficulty for the centre-back then. Other players are drawn into it. Tipperary don't have enough covering men. Watch him. Look, he's available here. He's available here again. And even when the ball breaks out, he's in a very good position. And because Pádraig Maher has been drawn into the game, he's actually in no man's land is where he leaves the centre back. And again, and I'm always on about it, younger players can learn from watching these guys. This ball was going down into the Kilkenny defence, but look where he is on the left-hand side. Kilkenny did change things around, and they did put Michael Cahill on him after this incident here. If you like, at this stage, he was taking Pádraig Maher all over the place and played a 1-2 with him, and you could see the tip line finally saying, look, we've got an issue here. Michael Cahill was marking him, but even though Michael Cahill is still a good marker, watch this here. Again, Richie feigns if he's going to go forward, stands off, looks for the ball. Michael Cahill is ball watching, if you like. Ball out to Richie and over the bar. And an incredible statistic for me was, I was doing the commentary today and I was talking about it in terms of how he actually was taking control of the game. In a 15-minute period, he actually got 4 points and set up another point. And that was a huge factor in the game today, because Pádraig Maher didn't have a bad game. Played well, and some of his distribution was top class. But pound for pound, this guy has been the best player in the country. And if that 15-minute period today had a huge impact on the game.
Yeah.
I suppose the interesting one here is that, he went down injured, and, we thought it might have been cramped. They were trying to, catch his 2 legs. And if that's the case, obviously he's fine. But there was talk after the match. It was a more serious. What a loss that guy would be if he wasn't available for them next week.
If you look at this graph, look at that. Look at his contribution. Out of this period where Kilkenny got those, I think we were looking at it, 6 scores, he scored 4 and set up the other one. Yeah. Incredible period of the game.
Look, he's a phenomenal player. He has been on the radar since he was 14.
You love him, don't you?
Yeah, I have great time for the chap. I think he has unbelievable skill. He's related to DJ. He's very like DJ in some of his mannerisms on the field. The hand pass is excellent, but to be fair to him, he has been, as Donal Logue said, he's been pound for pound probably the best hurler in the country this year. He has broke his way. He went through the school of hard knocks. He was on the bench for a year or two. He was on and off it. He's in there now, and to be honest, he is the main man for Kilkenny at the moment.
Okay, in a game that gave us everything, the amount of goal chances for both teams was quite extraordinary as well. I mean, Tipperary had, I don't know how many goal chances, Donal Logue.
Yeah, look, it added to the excitement. Goals a great part of our game, and it can be massive turning points. Pádraig Maher catches a puck out here. The bravery taking it on. Owen Murphy might be disappointed, but you often hear it in other sports with goalkeepers, the ball kind of just went underneath him. There were 2 chances for goals that Pádraig Maher had to pass off of his left-hand side today that didn't work out for him. Lark Corbett, he got a yard here, took on the man. That is some strike. It would have been an incredible goal. Again, we're talking about the vision of other players. That was a fantastic hand pass. And Tipperary were doing this all during today. And as we said already, you could see the Eamon O'Shea influence. This was a great chance. I give Owen Murphy great credit here, but not alone only Owen Murphy. Watch Conor Fogarty. I speak about it a lot in terms of when the line is broken. The guys in the half-back position need to forget about their own men and they need to track back, create numbers. JJ is able to go because Conor Fogarty is coming back here, and you see even Owen Murphy is a goalkeeper you always recognise and appreciate that. And that happened a couple of times today, and it was fantastic. Pádraig Maher, Paul Murphy played a good game, but he actually Pádraig Maher won a lot of balls over his head, lads. It might have been a nice height, but this ball was struck from a couple of yards, and especially with the new ball, the pace that ball was travelling at was a fantastic save by Owen Murphy.
But equally, Eddie, Kilkenny had a load of goal chances.
They did, yeah. There was a good few chances for them today. You'd have to say the ones that they did finish, they finished them very, very well. Richie Power was cool as could be on the first one. But this is one, TJ Reid, the vision, not too many might have seen this, but TJ Reid has the vision, and this is a sublime finish. I mean, that's very Messi-esque if you want. Look at this little lift and rise and tap it in. Very cool, because the pressure, it's hard to finish them when the goalie is bearing down you, but this here then is the second goal for TJ just after half-time. Lovely touch out, and there's a lot of bodies in front of Darren Gleeson, to be fair to him there, and that is an absolute pile driver. That is caught right on the sweet spot, and there's not much you can do with this. This one now, Richie Power, when you look at here, Darren is getting ready to attack, and Richie goes about pulling the trigger there, and he hesitates when he sees Darren. He steadies himself, and I thought maybe Darren could have come to him and narrowed the angle when Richie was going away from goal. But this is the missed chances. Colin Fennelly here, indecision here. I think, you have to rise that and challenge the goalie yourself, take it on yourself, take that responsibility. And he was just a little bit indecisive on that one. Maybe Mick was calling for it. And TJ, ghosting around the square. I think James Barry certainly bailed out Darren Gleeson on that one. But Darren, to be fair to him, came back with a superb save here. That was an unbelievable sidestep from TJ to get around Kieran Bergen. But the minimum of his arm saved Darren Gleeson there. So look, you'd be saying maybe a bit more clinical, but they did get 3 goals and were finished well.
Great bravery. Colin Finley's a kind of an intriguing character to me. Both of us were saying, we've spoken about him a couple of times, that if there was a transfer market, he just seems the type of forward that I'd like to have in terms of the way he takes on him. But you'd have to say his return rate is poor when he does get the chances. A bit critical, Eddie, would it be?
Yeah, it's probably a fair observation. I think he has so many attributes that make him the player that he is, and I think really good out the field to carry the ball in. But we've just seen on a couple of occasions, he has got his few goal chances, but he's missed a nice few of them too. And I would say, look, he's 4 or 5 years on the scene now. That has to polish up now a little bit more.
But I would say he got 3 goals and 5 points in the league match. Like he has that. Like he got one of the goals he got in the league match against Tipperary was phenomenal. He struck it off his left hand side. So I think he got his first point out. He got the first point of the game today after 40 seconds. But actually, by his standards, he wasn't in the game after that. By his standards.
Liam, one of the most beautiful things about a beautiful day, a beautiful game, was Tipperary's forwards scoring from play. You want to highlight that?
Well, I do. They scored 19 points in play. Like it's a phenomenal return against what has been over the last 10-15 years the meanest defence in the game. John O'Dwyer. I think Kilkenny were caught a little bit on the hop today. They expected John O'Dwyer to play wing, and Joey Holden was going to pick him up, and Joey Holden found himself in the corner. And again, Seamus Callan, there was a good period of the match gone at this stage, 4 points to 3 down. Shamey hadn't had his name on the scoreboard, and he's going away from goals. He showed a great amount of character there to be able to bang that ball. That's not an easy score over your shoulder. And again, the range of scores, and this was the very same as if you ran the tape on 5 years. I mean, 5 years ago, Larry Corbett done this in 2009. He went down. He was a different guy chasing him this time, and he cracked over a fantastic score, and he got 2 points from play today and set up some more tremendous scores. Likewise, Noel McGrath, would have been criticised maybe for his performance in the semi-final. Chipped in with 4 points today, fantastic return, and this one had Drummond Inch written all over it. James Woodlock gets in a fantastic hook. Seamus Conlon catches and put over the bar. And this is the best of the lot, without a shadow of a doubt. This guy got 7 points in play. An All-Ireland final, a point down, everything to do. And he had 2 Kilkenny guys against him. And he goes, and he's, I think Sterling will be proud that wristy stroke that Sterling Farr talks about. Well, John O'Dwyer had that today and just cracked over. It was, a fantastic equalising score.
In fairness, I don't think Cyril could see it because you were jumping up in front of him at the time. He couldn't see it. Anyway, let's hear what the 2 managers had to say afterwards. Not an easy one today.
No, it wasn't an easy one. I mean, there was some fantastic performances all over every part of the pitch. First player we went for from the nomination point of view was Richie Hogan. I think Don Logue spoke about him early on. He got a great return, especially from his period in centre forward. He got 6 points in total, 5 of those points in the second half. He had a massive contribution to make for Kilkenny, and if he was to be missing, he'd be massive loss the next day. Second guy was John O'Dwyer, probably known in Tipperary as Bubbles. He got 7 points. He's averaging well over 5 points a game at this stage. He's got a phenomenal return. He got 5 points in play and 2 from place balls, and nearly struck the winner in injury time. So he was our second nomination. And lastly, Cathal Barrett. For a guy that's his first season in the Tipperary jersey, he's had a phenomenal season. He had 15 plays, which is outstanding for an inside back, and he was outstanding, especially in that second half. So they were the 3 nominations today.
Okay, and Don Logue, who's the winner?
Yeah, it is, and not breaking any rank, but on the way back in the car, there was a great debate about who should be man of the match, and with all due respect to Cathal, I think Liam was going for Bubbles, and Eddie was going for Richie, and people said there's no bias in the Sunday game, but anyway, that's another day's work. But I went for Richie Hogan. I think he was absolutely outstanding today. The way he plays the game, he's got Maradona-like balance, bravery, able to catch ball up over guys' heads who are 6 and 7 inches taller than him, and the vision he has and the courage he has when he gets into those chances. And I'll add in this, I'd say that for the last 25 minutes today, he played with an injury.
Okay, well, let's hear what Richie had to say afterwards. Congratulations to him.
Richie, some terrific performances on both sides today. You made a huge contribution. What was it like to play in that game?
It was amazing. I suppose it was energy sapping. It really ebbed and flowed the whole way through. Tipperary were on top, and Kilkenny were on top at times as well. And maybe a draw was definitely the best result. And I suppose there's 80,000 people going home happy this evening.
There certainly is, and it's a game you scored 3 goals in, saved 2 penalties. You must have thought that it would be your day.
Yeah, you'd probably think like that, but I mean, Tipperary just, you know, they got 2 or 3 more goal chances as well, and I can remember Lark Corbett's one, and you know, Owen made some great saves, you know, and you know, we had a couple of chances ourselves with TJ and Owen Larkin. They were just barely out. So you know, it made great viewing anyway for supporters. But I suppose, as I said, it was just energy sapping and just a fantastic game to play in.
We're looking forward to doing it all over again. Well, congratulations. You are the GAA RTE Man of the Match. Liam O'Neill, the GAA President, is here with the trophy and some tickets from Etihad as well.
Congratulations.
Yeah, great prize for him, and well done to you, Rich.